Holly Ryan is a second-term ward councilor who grew up and raised her family in Oak Hill Park. She's a member of the Massachusetts Democrats Executive Board, an experienced legislator and activist, and endorsed by Ward 8 councilors Rick Lipoff and David Kalis. Stephen Farrell and Sarah Wilcox have lived in Newton for 24 years. 11 years ago, their dog Bandit joined them. Oh, okay. Stephen has spent his life listening, organizing, negotiating, and managing large nonprofit projects. These skills prepared him to successfully serve as a city councilor. And with that, Marjorie, it's to you.
Thanks very much, Chris. I assume that Bandit is part of your, will be part of your councilor team if elected, Stephen?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we are going to start with you, Stephen. What are your top 3 priorities and why?
Well, first of all, thank you. And I'm very glad that Holly is recovered from her infirmities and is here to join us today. My top 3 priorities are for Ward 8, and they're born of 24 years of frustration with my city councils and 5 months of listening to the frustration and alienation of hundreds of ward residents. I'm running to ensure that Ward 8 residents will have a city councilor they can call on any city issue who will listen and respond fully. I'm running to ensure Ward 8 residents that I will proactively communicate with them through regular newsletters and ward meetings and about what is happening in Newton on issues that they should be aware of. And I'm running to ensure that the city council committees and departments understand what Ward 8's issues and concerns are.
Thank you, Stephen. Holly?
Yeah, hi, I'm Holly Ryan. I'm the Ward 8 councilor. My 3 top priorities, but there are many more, are roads and sidewalks, funding our schools and our teachers' contract, and diversity, equity, and inclusion in our schools, community, and businesses and government. I've always been a watchdog for diversity, equity, inclusion. In my day, it was just inclusion in all areas of life, and that's what I fought for years before I was on the council. We need to fix our roads and sidewalks desperately, and I'm a big believer in funding our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Well, let's get to what is probably the most challenging question facing us, rezoning and the 2 plans to achieve it. Over the last few years, the administration and the city council have been drafting new, higher density zoning to meet 2 goals. First, to fulfill the state's MBTA Community Act. Newton was mandated to rezone for 8,330 units. Second, in addition to the MBTA Communities Act, Newton has been working on the Village Center Overlay Districts, VCOD, to reinvigorate our village centers and maximize capacity for more residential units, with emphasis on walkability and reduced vehicular use. As the rezoning proposal has been modified, altered, tweaked, Newton residents have heard proposals ranging from as many as 15,000 units to as low as 7,300 to 9,300 units. The fluidity of the numbers has been a challenge to understand. The state's compliance formula is flawed and doesn't equate to the actual number of units that would be built. So, what are the voters of Newton to make of all of this? Let's start with you. Holly.
Yeah, I've been, since I went on the council almost 4 years ago, one of my committees is zoning and planning. I had to learn a lot about zoning and planning itself. We were working on the overlay, and then along came the MBTA Communities Act, which kind of threw us a bit. The numbers, we've tweaked it quite a bit. Our MRT numbers have gone down now from 15,000 to about 4,000, and that's because of creating bigger setbacks, one space parking requirement. So, but we need to revitalize our village centers.
Okay, your time is up, but believe me, we're going to devote some time to this, so you'll
All
have a
right.
chance. Stephen, what light can you shed on this?
Well, let me say quickly, I support complying with the law and zone for 8,330 units. I oppose including the village centers in any by right development, and all further development and planning must begin with truly affordable housing, open spaces, parking, and traffic. It seems to me that the rezoning discussion over the past couple of years has essentially been about trying to understand what life will be like in Newton over the next 50 years. Literally billions of dollars will be spent on housing and commercial development, and it will increase density not only of housing, but also of traffic congestion, schools, and playgrounds. It will change Newton forever. Now, importantly, unfortunately, conservatively speaking, 80% of Ward 8 residents know nothing about it. The failure of city government in general and our 3 city councils in particular to inform 7,600 voters is unconscionable. I will
Okay.
never allow this to happen as a Ward 8 councilor.
Your time is up. Holly, let's go back to you. There seems to be a growing move of past the, I know that your committee approved the combined rezoning plan this past week. But I wonder, there seems to be a growing movement to separate the MBTA Communities Act and the residential units called for there from the village center rezoning. What's your sense of that?
Well, our council president brought up the fact that maybe we should phase in some of the village centers instead of just going with the whole MBTA Communities Act and the zoning overlay. I mentioned that I may be in favor of that, but what we passed the other night was the overlay with the MBTA Communities Act. I'd like to say that I've been here my whole life. I'm a big affordable housing advocate. My neighborhood is losing all the affordable housing we have left in Newton. And I want to revitalize our village centers and with retail on the bottom and housing on the top.
Stephen?
Would you kind of repeat the question? I mean,
Well, let me, the original question was about separating one
okay.
from the other, but what you could move into, because Holly mentioned the zoning for the village centers, and we hear a lot about zoning that values our human scaled villages. So will the plan that has been embraced by the zoning and planning committee achieve that human scale for village centers? So you could work that into your answer.
Well, first of all, as I said before, I think they ought to be separated. I don't think we should be zoning for any more than the 8,330 units. There are too many issues around this. One is the congestion, parking, traffic that have not been resolved, the issues about schools, the need for more open space, the need for infrastructure costs. None of these have been fully discussed. So I think we ought to separate them. And number one, for the village centers, because they're the heartbeat of our towns. I don't think that developers should have by right opportunities in those village centers. I think the city has a responsibility to oversee and supervise what happens in the village centers.
Holly, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, unfortunately, with our land use committee, things get too bogged down. It's based on, the by right is based on anything under 30,000. I mean, 3,000 square feet, and we need to do something in our village centers to revitalize them. They're just getting old and tired. And I'm not talking about outside the village centers. Ward 8 wouldn't even get any of this. We don't have a real village center in Ward 8. We have a couple of big 40B projects going on now. One of them I'm opposed to. So we just need to do something.
Both of you have touched very lightly, but let's dig down deeper on this major concern of affordable housing. How would the plans, if passed in their current form, address the need for affordable housing? Stephen, you start.
Well, let me say clearly that my sense of affordability is when people who teach our children, protect their lives and property, or service in any capacity, and who have lived or want to retire in Newton are financially able to do so. Currently, none of the new housing that is proposed under the MBTA it's mostly market rate. Even under the affordability definition, a teacher earning $80,000 a year would never be able to live in this housing. Affordability means to me in Ward 8 saving a lot of the housing that we have that could in fact be converted into affordable housing, rather than let developers come in and buy every piece of it and turn it into $5 million properties.
Holly, what is your sense of affordable housing, and what are the best prospects for more affordable housing in Ward 8 specifically? Do you have locations in mind? And I'll come back to you, Stephen, on that part of the question. Holly?
Once again, in Ward 8, it's going to be tough. I'm not promoting to build any big projects in Ward 8. But outside of the ward, if you ever listen to me in zoning and planning, I'm a lot of time at odds with my fellow councilors. As Stephen said, under the present AMI, it's not affordable. It's 80%. It doesn't work. I've always been talking about 50 to 30% AMI.
Can you give us a figure on that?
Well, it's based on, on income. If so, your 30 to 50 would be workforce housing, teachers, police, fire, DPW workers, and we need to do smaller units. And I fought for smaller units, and I'm told that I can't dictate that, and we have to, because that's the only way we're going to get the price down on these things.
Stephen, you get 10 seconds added to your time because we took more from Holly. Do you have a sense of specific sites in Ward 8 that would lend themselves to affordable housing?
Yes, there are still hundreds of split-level ranch homes, small capes, that, for example, that could be preserved. They're in good, structurally sound houses. They could be preserved with innovative funding to make them starter homes or just basic homes for teachers, police, firefighters, under some imaginative programs that would make them available to people in the city.
Okay, let's move on a bit.
Can I rebut that?
Sure.
I mean, just a minute. I'd love to see that happen, but it's not. I've watched my neighborhood when young families want to buy a home. I'm in a home that's on a slab. That's a ranch. That's got a 2-room addition on an original Oak Hill Park house that my father bought for $7,000. But every time a young family wants to buy the home, or did, the developer, the builder, the residential builder would come in and outbid them. And now it's to the point that it's just people have realized that their property values have gone up, and they want to sell to the developer at the higher price. So
Okay.
I mean, you can protect them as much as you want, but we're caught in this trap, it seems.
Stephen, you seem
Just quickly, I think there are
Very
zoning
quick.
regulations, that could be changed about how large these houses can be built on properties that I think would dissuade some developers from coming in and offering outrageous prices and building 6,000 to 7,000 square foot houses that you end up with 2 or 3 people living in. I
okay.
just think innovatively, there's a way for the city to look at some of this.
All right, let's move on. What remaining green spaces are there in Ward 8? And what would you do to preserve them? Stephen, you're first up this time.
Sure, I think we're blessed with a lot of open, great green spaces in Ward 8, the Hampton Park, Sawmill Brook Conservation, Kennard Parking Conservation, and the Charles River Reservation. Those are some big ones. We're also about to lose some. There's a proposed development on Dudley Road that will take 15 acres of wooded land and turn it into housing. I think it's a shame that we're losing that. It'll all be mostly market rate and affordable under outrageous definition, but a market rate housing. We're going to lose more land on 528 Boylston Street, where a lot of the trees will be taken down for an enormous 200-unit luxury apartment building.
Okay, Holly, your sense of what green spaces remain and how would you hold on to them?
Well, we have the Hampton Woods. We have combined DCR and Newton open space at the end of Sawmill Brook Parkway and Wiswall Road in Oak Hill Park. The farm itself, Wood 8 has a lot of open space. I think more so than a lot of the woods. And as far as Dudley goes, Dudley Road, I would like to see it be more just the city buy it, the open space in the park, and give a little of it to the on the Brandeis Road side to the school for maybe electrified buses, parking, and things like that. But we got to keep everything we have on Wood 8 that's open. And I did testify against 528.
Oh, okay. Drilling down a bit, in what ways would you amend our existing 2014 ordinance provisions regarding tree removal and add more regulation to protect our existing tree canopy? What would that look like, Holly?
Yeah, once again, it's in my committee, programs and services. We've been dealing with this for months and months. I am on record as stating that I don't think that a builder should be able to come in and totally clear cut a lot just to put in one of these shoes houses or a big development. And sometimes the reason is just to get their equipment in, and that's not right. I'm also in favor of a family that's been in a house I tried to get it to be 3 years or more, but it's 2 years or more, that they have to be given some provisions if they want to put an addition to bring another family member in or a growing family. And also
I'm sorry, Stephen, tree canopy?
I think tree canopy is a public resource, and I don't think anyone should be allowed to remove trees without participating in some program to replenish those trees. I don't think 1 and 2 family homes should be excluded from this. While people may own they may have trees on their property, those trees all add to the universal tree canopy that's important to Newton. When people talk about the families that want to add an independent or expand their home for whatever reason, you're talking about 1,000 square foot addition is going to cost you $325,000. If you need to remove some trees, you should be able to afford to replenish the fund that will protect those trees.
Okay. The next question starts with Stephen. How do you feel about the transportation options currently available in our city? A lot of people propose encouraging residents to use public transport, bikes, or walk by reducing parking requirements and redesigning city streets for pedestrians and cyclists. Would you support these measures, or would you pursue something different?
First and
Steve?
foremost, sorry.
No, I'm just saying you're first this time.
Okay. Focusing again on Ward 8 just for a second, because that's where I want to be a city councilor. If it weren't for school buses, I'm not entirely certain we would understand public transportation at all. There really isn't anything in Newton that helps with public transportation. On the larger scene, when we're talking about creating 15,000 more units of housing and not requiring developers to provide parking spaces for those units, that's a little bit crazy to me. So you can talk about widening sidewalks and removing parking places and encouraging people to walk and ride the T. But where are people going to put those cars? If you have a family of 4 and you have a child that wants to go play soccer and another one wants to do ballet, how are they supposed to get there? Public transportation in this city goes east and west, but it doesn't go north and south.
Time, Holly.
Yeah, Marjorie, I'm sorry, but my computer cut out halfway through your question.
Oh, well, okay, I'm sorry. The transportation options and the move to get people to use public transit, bikes, or walk by reducing parking requirements and redesigning streets for pedestrians and cyclists. Do you support those measures, or would you prefer another approach?
No, I do support those measures, but it's a little tough in Ward 8, unfortunately, and I'll admit it, that in Ward 8, everyone seems to need a car. I've been fighting for years, even before I was a counselor. They want to get rid of the 52 bus, it seems, every 5 years, and we have to fight to keep it. And we almost lost it totally after COVID. They didn't want to bring it back. In this city, our public transportation is not good unless you're right in village centers with the green line and the commuter rail. And if you want to go across the city, there's really no public transportation. But I think our bike path should be connected. We should have connectivity between the village centers and out of the city.
This is a simple yes or no answer that this question poses. And Holly, you go first. Would you vote to repeal the ban on overnight parking during winter months? I know it was just recently, the proposed ban was recently defeated, but the issue is not going away. So would you vote to repeal the ban on overnight parking?
I voted at the last city council meeting to repeal the ban.
Yes. Oh, you voted to repeal. Yes, to repeal.
Yeah.
Stephen?
With all due respect, this isn't a simple question. If you want
just try yes or no.
Yes, I would repeal it.
Okay. Since 1984, just a handful of police officers in Newton have received disciplinary suspensions, mostly for conduct unbecoming. How well do you think their training is helping them deal with mental health crises, such as that occurred in Newton Highlands a while back, or active shooter situations, or last spring's handling of Black spectators at the marathon and their claim of being mistreated? Holly?
Yeah, I've been critical in certain instances like Newton Highlands and the marathon situation, but I overall support our police. I think our new police chief, which I was part of the search committee on that, which was a totally new experience for me, but I wanted an LGBTQ voice there. I think he's doing a good job in bringing in a lot more training than we had before. I actually trained these command staff at one point on LGBTQ issues, domestic violence, when you have that. But we didn't, but now we have. But I will always criticize one specific incident if I don't like it. But I think our police department is great.
Okay, Stephen?
I think our police department is doing a very good job also. There's no doubt that we can all, in any area, benefit from ongoing training. We should never stop learning. I think the marathon was a failure of communication. I'm very glad to hear that the BAA and the police are beginning to meet and discuss these issues. Mr. Conlon's killing was thoroughly investigated and the police were cleared. I think the police in this city do a pretty darn good job, but yes, we all need to continue training.
Okay, the city has about $40 million in surplus funds. The mayor proposed putting a large portion of that into a new Operations Booster Stabilization Fund. The city council recently voted down her proposal. So what's the dispute here and what do you think we should do? Stephen, you go first.
Well, I think the dispute is really about how to use these additional funds. There are, as I understand it, there's the assessment reserves, there's free cash, and there's the rainy day fund. And some of that money could, in fact, be used to pay off expenses that we were not anticipated in our budget. But the budget process should be one that allows people flexibility every year. I think committing some of this money for an 8-year period doesn't allow for that flexibility. We never know what's going to happen either with the markets or some incident that would require that we have some additional funds. I think the funding for the schools can be balanced in, and I just think we shouldn't commit that much money over such an extended period of time.
Holly?
Yeah, I voted against the plan. I was one of the councilors that did. And my statement was basically that we need more funding for the schools right now, not over an 8-year period. And we need to settle the teacher's contract. I always believe in a fair wage for anybody, and we need to get that done now. As far as the free cash, there's many reasons that we end up with a lot of free cash. Higher returns. We had a mild winter, but we can use it in many ways. But I'm not in favor of the spreading it out over 8 years and being a big supporter of schools. That's where the money has to go right now.
Well, the question that never seems to go away has to do with the city's adequately funding its post-retirement health benefits, the OPEB liability. So do you think that we are doing an adequate job? If we're not, what would you do differently? And are there 3 things that you would recommend that would put the city on a more solid financial footing? Holly?
I think right now with what we did recently by being able to spread out the pensions is going to work. I think what we're doing right now is the right way to go about it. We're looking at 2030 to catch up on the pensions, and I believe that plan right now works.
Stephen?
I think a lot of it begins with the city council having, in fact, a much more active role in oversight of the mayor's budget. There are things in that budget which I constantly look at, and particularly given all of the conversations about planning recently. I don't know why we're doing year after year $200,000 worth of consultants. I believe that there's more commercial revenue that could be generated, and we lost an opportunity on Route 9 and Langley Road to have a significant commercial property developed there. It will not happen now. And as we all know, we can generate more revenue from commercial property than residential property. And just finally, if I would just quickly say, I know where the city can find $250,000 today if they would just do it. And I can explain that later if you want.
Well, no, say it right now and then we'll give
Right
Holly.
now, the developer who destroyed the 29 Greenwood historic home has been fined $300 a day for now almost 2.5 years, and the city has never charged the developer to put that money into a reserve account to protect it. The developer now owes the city $270,000. He's in court. If he loses his court case, he'll declare bankruptcy and the city will never get any of that money. I don't
Holly,
understand why the city doesn't do this.
Holly, how do you respond to that?
Well, as far as the Greenwood farmhouse, the Greenwood Street farmhouse, which I would see every day when I went to school at Newton South, which was a great loss to the community. Unfortunately, there's only so much you can do as a city councilor. I'm on record as saying that if I had my way, this developer would never do business in the city again. And then when I went and checked where the money was going, the $300 a day fine, I was told we had to wait till the court case was over before we could collect the money. And maybe we won't ever collect it, but that's what I'm told, and that's what as a city councilor, as investigating, that's what happens, unfortunately.
All right. Before we move off of finances, how do you feel about changing the pilot program, payments in lieu of taxes? Stephen, do you think that there is more money to be extracted there from our nonprofit institutions?
I think that we need to be really careful with that. I think there are a lot of opportunities with the nonprofit organizations can provide services to the city instead of taxes. We're all looking for more recreational activities. And one of the things that's been disturbing to me is that the Charles River Country Club used to be used for sledding in the wintertime. And recently they have stopped people from doing that. Given the increase in population and the need for resources, I think we can begin to look at some of those nonprofit organizations and see what we can do about sharing some resources. I'll just leave it at that at the moment.
Okay, Holly?
Yeah, I mean, having worked for a nonprofit most of my life, I question this a lot, but if, like with Brayburn and Charles River recently, and then it seemed to be not allowing people onto the property. It's supposed to be open space. We're supposed to be able to use it. As I said, growing up here, I used to use Charles River Country Club for sledding. I actually worked there when I was an adult, but I think we have to look into it. Our colleges do pay something. It's not a tax, but it's and when we've asked them sometimes to pay more, they do.
How do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process in our town? Stephen, you started talking about a sense of alienation among people, lack of information, et cetera. The question is, how specifically do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process? First, Stephen, then Holly.
Well, first and foremost, I would say we need a website that is easily navigable. It is very frustrating to use the city's website. Secondly, I think the city needs to be much more proactive in informing residents, all residents, about big issues, such as this whole MBTA upzoning business. I had conversations with the chair of the Zoning and Planning Committee when there was a question about putting a non-binding question on the ballot about how residents felt about this project. I was told twice. Once that the question was much too complicated and people wouldn't understand it. Second time, that was much too simple, people wouldn't understand it. And I keep saying, well, there's a middle ground if somebody wants to develop it. I would like to say that Holly voted against informing the residents of this city twice because it was too complicated and then because it was too simple. I don't believe either of those things to be true.
Holly?
Yeah, I'll respond to that first. Yeah, I voted against it. that I think we had to do our work in zoning and planning and the community, which I believe in referendums, wants to bring a referendum afterwards. They can, but we wanted to get our work done on the zoning and planning committee. And trying to think, what was the first part of the question?
Well, how specifically do you plan to?
I got, yeah, right. Yeah, our city website is terrible. It's awful. I, as a counselor, have trouble navigating it sometimes. I'd like to go back to the old way. We used to do things to notify people, putting it in their water and sewer bills, putting it in their tax bill, their housing tax bills. There's so much better ways to do it. We used to have newspapers, that we could put things in to let people know what was going on, what meetings and everything else. But we don't have that anymore. It's
Well,
really.
Stephen, you had your hand raised. Do you want to?
Two quick questions, 2 quick points. This was not a referendum that people were asking to put on the ballot. It was a non-binding question, just to get a sense of people in the city of what they wanted. I also say that I will commit to having a regular newsletter to residents of Ward 8, and I will commit to having the community meetings with them. Holly, over the past 3.5 years, has put out one letter 5 weeks ago, which talked about a summation of her work with the ward. That's just not acceptable.
Okay, Holly, do you want to have a quick rebuttal to that?
No, I mean, you can't be in touch with every single household in Ward 8. I respond to people when they ask me to help them. I've always been good on constituent services. I've had meetings with different community groups in Ward 8 when they ask me to come. Sometimes I come even though they don't ask me, but this is what you can do. You can't respond to every single person in Ward 8.
Okay. Now, back in the day, the city used to send out a questionnaire with the annual census, I believe it was, to every single household to assess the level of satisfaction or dissatisfaction with different aspects of living in Newton. If elected, would you push to have that reactivated? And that's just a simple yes or no. Holly and then Stephen.
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Good. I'll look forward to seeing that. Also, of course, we do have the online publications, Newton Beacon and Big City News. On what issues, if any, would you vote for an issue with citywide implications if it ran against the wishes of your own ward? Stephen, then Holly.
The hypothetical question that I can't imagine, without informing the residents of the ward and getting a true sense of what they feel about it, I'm not entirely certain how I could possibly answer that question. The problem is that we have not been Holly has not been proactive in going to the residents and saying, what are your interests and concerns? She just stated she waits for residents to come to her. And that is not being proactive. It's to say, would I vote against the people of Ward 8 versus the city? I mean, God, help me with the kind of question it would be. I would certainly do my most to inform the residents of this ward and give them opportunities to speak before I made any decision about that.
Holly?
Yeah, like I said, I've lived here my whole life. I'm passionate about the ward. I really care about the ward. And that's why I ran. I've been called the wardy before because I care more about the ward than the city as a whole, but I'll still vote for this things for the whole city that I think are great for the city of Newton. But I believe that I am a strong ward city councilor and meet the needs for the constituents of the ward.
Each of you has been promised an opportunity to ask a question of your opponent. So, Stephen, do you have a question of Holly that perhaps you haven't raised already?
Sure. I mean, Holly, I don't understand in a project that is will have such a significant impact on the life of everyone in Newton, and how you would support increasing the housing opportunities in this city to 15,000 and not require developers to provide commensurate parking spaces.
Holly?
Yeah, I mean, I'm for not requiring some parking with some of the developments right in the village centers, but I am for in the MRTs requiring a parking space for those, and I still don't believe that the number is 15,000. It's more like 4,000. And I think if we get people out of the cars when we're near the T, and a lot of young families now don't, or young people coming out of college don't want cars. And if we can get them into smaller units, then we don't need all the parking that we used to require. In Ward 8, we do need it. We need cars, unfortunately.
Holly, do you have a question for Stephen?
Yes, I'm wondering, Stephen, that you know, when you become a city councilor, you have to work for your constituents with all the city departments, Parks, Rec, and Culture, DPW, even the mayor's office. How do you plan to build those relationships, which some have been a little contentious when you've been dealing with these department heads to get things done for maybe your neighborhood or whatever, because those relationships are very important.
I think the relationships are very important, but the job of a city council is to represent the interests of the people in the wards, for sure, as we are. Sometimes that might be contentious. It doesn't mean that it's unfriendly. It doesn't mean that I'm not willing to go from one issue to another issue where I would support some issues and not be contentious about it. But sure, there are going to be times when I say, no, I don't agree with that. And I would like you to explain to the residents of our neighborhood why you're doing some of this. If that seems contentious, then those people need to understand that I've been elected to represent their concerns and interests and to get them answers. If it seems contentious, I'm very sorry. I'll try to be nicer.
I wanted to return to the village centers for a moment. Part of the promise of the village centers is not just housing residential units above stores. It's the stores themselves, and where developers are, the cost of construction is so high these days. Developers frequently would have to raise the rents for the shops that are underneath these residential units in the village centers. How do you protect local businesses and small business owners that who often create the character of the village center? Let's start with you, Holly.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I watched all these wonderful small businesses, especially in Newton Center, because that's the closest thing to when I was growing up, would be a village center for people in Ward 8. I just watched them all go because of raising the rents. And these are people that I grew up with their kids, and I'd say, why are you leaving? Why is Blacker Brothers Fruit Store leaving? Why is Langley Dell leaving? Why are these bakeries leaving? It's because the rents get raised so high. And yeah, you're right, it probably will be the same now, but I know over on Washington Street at Trio, some of the small businesses were offered to stay. Newtonville Camera didn't choose to. The bond did move down there. It's a tough question. I mean,
Stephen, I think you're out of time based on the little tweet. Stephen, what's your sense? How do you protect small businesses that have been part of the character of the neighborhood as the village center revitalization goes on?
There are two pieces to this. One is I don't see anything in the revitalization plan that will protect the current small businesses. There's nothing in there that will allow them alternative space, that will guarantee that their ability to return. There's nothing in the current plan about protecting existing businesses. Secondly, by not allowing the development of the village centers to be by right, I think the city retains its ability to negotiate certain aspects of the development that could mean ways of maintaining reasonable rents for the tenants. I mean, frequently in a lot of these big things, the city requires payments in lieu of taxes or payments that would help support the city schools or something. We could do something imaginative, I think, if we retain the oversight and not make it by right.
Well, of course, in the larger developments, there are conditions that are put in. How do you ensure that the things to which developers agree in order to get the permit are actually adhered to? You know, the big developer that says, no, I'm going to have only local businesses, I'm not going to have a bank. Then after the developer is up and running, comes back for permission to put in the bank, and the council says, fine, put in a bank. Holly, you have some experience on the council. Are you satisfied that the conditions of permitting are actually enforced?
No, I mean, I know the situation you're talking about. You know, we made a deal that there was going to be no bank. It was trio, and then he came. I'm not for that. Just do what we originally said. Some things you have to be flexible on, but I'm not on that. And remember that our the MBTA Communities Act requires that housing and that a village center, if you're building in the village centers, to be by right. We don't have a choice on that. I think that if we have more people and more people living in the village centers, it's going to help the small businesses.
Stephen, do you want
First
to?
and foremost, I would say the only reason the MBTA has a word in this on the village centers if we allow them to, if you want to build more than 8,000 units of housing. My understanding is the plan allows building the 8,000 units of housing, not including the village centers. So that's out.
No, excuse, I'll interrupt you and then let you finish because you have a half of it. The state did finally say that the village center development, the residential units over the commercial areas can be included. That was a change the state made.
That's
anyway,
really
go ahead.
true.
You still have 30 seconds.
They did say that, but
Yes.
the village centers shouldn't be by right development, in my opinion. As I've said before, the city can meet its 8,300 without including the village centers and allowing developers to have by right. And I think, you know, if a developer, it's all part of the process, it seems to me, that there ought to be a way to say to a developer, if you agree to do this and you don't do it, there's a penalty. And it's defining the penalty.
Okay, one question that I'd like to make sure to get in.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
Quickly? I totally was upset with the fact that we weren't able to put retail on the first floor and living space on the top. With my relationships with the state and federal delegations that I've had for years, I went to Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll, and who I had heard was agreed with us. And along with other cities and towns, we fought to get that retail and make it part of the MBTA Communities Act.
Stephen, you get equal time.
Just quickly, that's lovely. Thank you very much for doing that. But the point is, in order to meet our legal requirement of 8,330 units, we do not have to include the village centers. And if we don't include the village centers, then it is not by right development
But why wouldn't we include the village center?
because we don't need it.
We need
To meet the
to,
8,000 units of housing, we don't need the village centers.
that's where we want to put it.
Well, that's where you want to put it, but that doesn't mean we need it there. And I am opposed to putting the village centers as by right development. I want them to be controlled by the city.
All right, one more theme that we could deal with before closing comments. What can Newton do to get National Grid to amp up the solving the problem of gas leaks in this city? And we'll start with Holly.
Well, I mean, I agree with Mothers Out Front, but the mapping, I walked with them and mapped, actually mapped Oak Hill Park. I didn't realize we had that many gas leaks. I want to get off the fossil fuels. I want to get off the gas. I want to go to electrification. I'm tired of seeing these brand new homes. We're falling behind on this because we have so much new development. But all we can do is stay on them to do this. But if we start threatening to get off the gas, I think it'll make a difference.
Stephen?
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think the city's begun a good effort to move towards electrification of everything. And I think part of the issue with the utilities is coordinating the resurfacing of roads with whatever the utilities need to do. I mean, it's really tiresome to see the city go in and restore a road and then have the utilities come in and fix something and tear it up again and not restore it properly. There's no reason why we can't coordinate better with the utilities about when the streets are open, fix the things that are there. Those that need to be fixed, that's your job. Make them do it.
Okay, well, we look forward to stronger enforcement going forward. The time has come to provide each of you an opportunity to sum up why you and not your opponent should be elected to represent Ward 8 on the Newton City Council. Stephen, you go first.
Well, again, thank you very much for this opportunity. I really want to thank the area councils for allowing us and for putting on this debate. First, I believe that our city government must be very proactive in keeping residents informed of issues important to their lives. Residents are not responsible for checking in to see what's going on. That is our job. That's why people elect us. Second, the city must be prepared to listen and act when residents ask for information or help, not to say we'll get back to you and never do so. That's precisely what city councils, again, are elected to do, especially ward councils. We've not had this representation in Ward 8. I ask you to vote for me for Stephen Farrell, and I promise that I will do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Holly, why are you the one who should be ward councillor from Ward 8?
Yeah, I'd like to continue the work that I've done here in the ward. I do take care of the constituents in Ward 8. I look at Ward 8 issues and then look at how they affect the whole city and what can help our constituents in Ward 8. I want to protect our open space, continue to protect it. I want to maintain my relationships with our federal and state delegations, which I pride myself on being able to pick up a phone and get them to answer and help, like with the Ruth Balzer with the Christina Street Bridge funding. These are things I can continue to do for the ward. I would hope you will re-elect me as your Ward 8 City Councilor. Thank you.
Well, thank you both for setting aside the time to reflect on some of the most important issues facing the city. And thank you both for your willingness to put yourself forward to run for public office. It's an important service to the community. A quick but significant note, the ballot printing was confusing. The word councillor for each of the 8 wards is at the end of the school committee races on the back side of the ballot. The school committee candidates are not opposed. You have to have a reason to go to the other side of the ballot, but your reason is to vote for ward counselor. And that listing is directly below the last school committee race. So be sure to look for it. Thanks to the area councils who planned the logistics of this series of debates, which finally comes to an end today. And the councils changed their plans and changed them again to accommodate different circumstances. But we made it through all of the contested races, and be sure to vote on or before November 7th. Thanks for being with us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.